There is a group of workers out there who can retire in their 50s with guaranteed income for life, but a lot of them still struggle financially when it comes to retirement. This is the world of educator retirement. Teachers have benefits that a lot of Americans dream of: pensions, early retirement options, but they also face unique financial pitfalls that can, well, quite frankly, derail everything. So we're going to break down why being a teacher means planning retirement is done with completely different rules, and why understanding these rules could make or break those golden years of retirement. So, gentlemen, let's jump right in.
Well, retirement planning for teachers and educators is really different than it is for the general public. And, Dave, I know you're on the show with us today talking about some of the things that you've experienced firsthand with your wife being in the teaching profession, I think her whole career. And you spent obviously a lot of time in that sector as well before spending the last, 20 years here as a financial advisor, financial professional. And I think there are some big differences when you look at what are the differences between retirement planning for general public and those that are, say, in the Ohio State Teachers Retirement System, or just educators in general.
I started my teaching career in 1985, and 21 years as a high school teacher and a coach. I signed up for a defined benefit pension, which basically means if I taught 30 years, I was going to collect a $6,000 to $7,000 monthly pension every month for the rest of my life. And I was going to probably receive cost of living adjustments every year for my entire retired life. Well, I can tell you that scenario has most definitely changed for just about every educator in the state of Ohio over that period of time and moving past it. Now you have all kinds of choices. For example, when I signed on as a teacher, 30 years, you could retire on a full pension. So if you came into education right out of college, you could be fully retired by 52 or 53 years of age. Well, some things happen, and the state of Ohio comes out and says, we need teachers to go beyond 30 years, and guess what? We'll give you a 2.5% sweetener for every year that you go beyond 30. Well, that opened up a floodgate of a lot of people doing the math and saying, gee, I can greatly enhance my retirement by going 5 or more years after 30 and really enhancing my pension. Well, then the state of Ohio comes out and says, now we need you to go 35, and FYI, if you do the 35 and you're not age 60, you're going to have a gap. There's going to be a gap between your minimum retirement age and when you can start collecting. So that threw a big roadblock up for a lot of teachers in terms of planning for their retirement. Now we sit in a situation where they have lowered it from 35 and 60. Now you could retire at 32 years and you will just suffer a 2.2% reduction in your pension for every year that you retire before you finish year 35. The other thing that's happened in Ohio is that the STRS board many years ago came out and said, we cannot afford these 3% cost of living adjustments, so therefore we're going to eliminate them. And that threw a buzzsaw right into the wheelhouse of a lot of retired educators. This year they came out and said, we're going to give a 1.5% COLA to anyone that retired prior to 2021. So my rationale in discussing all these things is that the landscape of retirement for educators has really shifted greatly in the last 10 years. And when you start looking at what the rules are today, well, what will they be in 10 years? And as a financial professional who has a real soft spot in his heart for educators, as I am married to an educator, planning has never been more important. And taking a look at what decisions need to be made to help maximize income, minimize risk, and also give teachers the opportunity to take advantage of things that have occurred, because it used to be teachers could not participate in the Social Security system, which means claiming, in many cases, the Social Security benefit of a deceased spouse. That has changed. The windfall has been eliminated. There's just so many different planning topics that need to be considered for a teacher who's considering retirement.
Well, I know, Dave, you've got an event coming up on November 11th at 7 p.m. here at America's Retirement Headquarters. We're going to kind of be diving deeper into that topic and, again, how retirement planning is different for educators versus the general public. For those people who are either like you, married to an educator, spent time as an educator, or are currently an educator, I think it's a great event to come out to, especially those people that are within 5 years of retirement or just have recently retired. Maybe you're looking at 2026 as your year, because when you look at it, there is a big difference. In the good old days, and even still today, one of the great benefits about the teaching profession is the ability to have that defined benefit pension plan through the either STRS or OPERS system, where, growing up, I've been self-employed my entire life. Our company has a 401k plan, that defined contribution plan. And I know, with the younger generation that are out there today, they've got different choices of the, options to save and build for their own retirement. And those are big choices. Number two, as you had pointed out, in 2025, there was a law change that went into effect. In fact, it's one of the biggest law changes for educators that have been out there, and that is the change of how Social Security benefits work. Meaning in the past, they didn't receive Social Security benefits unless they fell under substantial earning years based upon that windfall elimination provision, the government pension offset. Now, if you're married, maybe you've lost a spouse, maybe you've earned some entitlement to Social Security because you were working and earning credits elsewhere. If you don't know how the Social Security applies to your situation, you'll be diving deeper into that as well. The big other difference, I think, for people that are in the teaching profession is how, say, healthcare and retirement works. And I know that that's been a different option. I think different school districts or different state plans, they can vary widely, can't they, on what the health insurance choices are?
Absolutely. And you know what? Since we have a top flight, best in class Medicare team here at America's Retirement Headquarters, I truly believe that teachers who retire and avail of themselves to the state teachers retirement system really ought to take a look as they approach 65 years of age to compare the STRS benefits to what they can buy, what they can get done for themselves in the Medicare environment, because the benefits in the healthcare system under STRS, they're not. Most teachers suffer a big drop in terms of the quality of the insurance that they have while they're working to what they have once they're retired. And I do think that when that happens, there's an initial shock in that they thought they had the same types of coverage, and in reality, they do not.
Another big thing is we talked about in the beginning of the segment is the retirement timing is a little bit different, typically between educators and the general public. Retirement eligibility under the older formulas is usually dependent upon the years of service plus your age as the formula. It was kind of like the rule of 85, if you will. And that, rule allowed some of the educators to retire maybe in their 50s or early 60s and have that strong pension where, for most of us that are in the general public, we have to typically wait till later where we're relying on, Social Security to kick in or maybe, to become Medicare eligible. The fifth that's somewhat unique is some of the other supplemental savings. So you have pensions, defined contribution plans. Those have been options that are available. But educators also have access to 403Bs, 457 plans to supplement some of their pension income. And just like I would say, don't rely on the federal government to take care of you. I would say don't rely on the state to take care of you. They're going to change the formula. They could change the formula with things like cost of living increases. They could change it with what healthcare costs are. So as much as you can continue to save for your own future using the 403Bs and the 457 plans, it's going to be a way to kind of pad that extra cushion that you have for as well. Because as you talked about, the inflation and the cost of living, for educators is not really going to be that big. I think next year you had mentioned the cost of living increase was what, 1.5%?
Yes. And that's for people that have been retired for, basically 4 years or longer. So how does that impact the people who are going to retire now? They can't count on the fact that there's going to be a cost of living adjustment for them. Maybe when they're 4 years into retirement, there could be something, but the stress that would be placed on the pension system to be able to segregate money to help pay these cost of living adjustments, it creates a real issue in terms of if we set that money aside for the COLAs, is there enough money in the system to pay the basic benefits and cover all of that?
Yeah, and even finally down to things like the survivorship options that you have on your pensions, whether you take a lump sum pension, whether you take a single life payment, or whether you take some type of survivor benefit as well. Those are all things, again, Dave, you're going to be teaching in that class that's coming up in November. Again, if you're a teacher or know somebody who's in the teaching profession, encourage them to go over to our website, arhq.com, click on the events tab, and they can sign up. And the bottom line is educators often enjoy the security of a pension, but most importantly need to plan for some of the gaps that are out there. They need to understand how to navigate the healthcare landscape, factor in the cost of living increases, knowing that inflation may end up being much higher. And then how does it work into building that legacy plan if you're married and or want to leave money to your loved ones? So, having a smart plan in place as an educator is one of the most important things to do.